Liberation Aotearoa. We have 10 minutes set aside for you to hear from you, and if you wanted to have any questions at the end of your submission, and please leave us a bit of time for that. Otherwise, the 10 minutes are up to you, however you like to use it. Floor is yours.
Morena, I do hope to leave time for questions. Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui. My name's Jan Rivers. I'm speaking on behalf of Women's Liberation Aotearoa. They did want to speak to their submission, but in the light of a clashing presentation on the BDMRR bill, they've asked me to make it. I mention this because I'm coordinating the presentation for another organisation. I aim to leave time for questions. Our comments, and I'm speaking for Women's Liberation Aotearoa now, relate to the failure to differentiate between gay conversion therapy and support to people who are questioning their identity, what's expressed in the bill as gender expression and gender identity. We have information that's come to light since we provided our original submission, which we will present. We have a fully referenced paper with the new information which we are presenting, which we can provide to the committee. The contribution that we're making is organised under the following headings. Firstly, some recent changes in New Zealand psychiatry. Secondly, the way that the medicalisation of gender questioning people is falling out of favour internationally. Thirdly, we address some serious ethical issues which are recognised in New Zealand. Fourthly, we speak about the way that gender identity medicine harms gay and lesbian youth. Secondly, fifth, we talk about the new cohort of young women who are identifying as male in massively large numbers. Then we talk about the way that the proposed law describes harm has it quite the wrong way round. Harms caused by gender medication are severe and the evidence base is low. We talk then about how can we criminalise under these circumstances. Criminalisation is untenable with the uncertainty of the level of the current evidence. So just 2 weeks ago, the Royal Australian New Zealand College of Psychiatrists launched new guidance for gender dysphoria. It now says of the patient, comprehensive assessment is crucial. Assessment and treatment should be evidence-informed. It should fully explore the patient's gender identity, the context in which this has arisen, other features of mental illness, and a thorough assessment of personal and family history. The whole guideline is couched in these terms. So the new standard reflects the low certainty that gender medicine is effective and the emerging problems, including of overdiagnosis, that are emerging across the world. And I'd just like to speak now. Puberty blockers are promoted as being a breathing space for neurologically immature kids. But this is being questioned. Sweden has stopped prescribing puberty blockers for children. Finland has also issued strict guidelines around their use. Western Australia has prevented their use without a court order. A UK court case last year found even that it was highly unlikely that 16 and 17-year-olds could properly consent, given the medical impacts on their future lives. So therefore, we propose that the wording of paragraphs 5.2d and 5.2e must be changed to explicitly allow practitioners to identify causative factors, provide differential diagnosis. It doesn't do that at the moment. It talks about exploration in general terms. And also to provide an individualised support plan based on a clinical diagnosis, which may include psychosocial support and watchful waiting. Providing no medication or surgery under these new conditions must not be criminalised. Even the ethical issues related to the provision of gender medicine are even recognised in New Zealand. To really emphasise this, a 2021 project supervised by Dr. Sue Bagshaw, which was about research into effective interventions for gender dysphoria, found that there were ethical issues with whether adolescents could actually consent to medical treatment, whether the treatment was experimental, whether more harm is caused by giving or withholding treatment. But this isn't recognised by the bill. It's conversion therapy from gay and lesbian kids to transgender. It's sterilising gay kids and making them into lifelong patients. It does this because puberty blockers are suppressing the emerging sexuality of young people, preventing them from experiencing their same-sex attraction. Without puberty blockers, A Canadian study found that 88% of the boys desisted. It was a study of young boys who identified as the opposite sex. Of those, 63% of the participants were ascertained to be bisexual or gay. Much other research has similar results. A study at the Tavistock Clinic in London, in contrast, where a study from 2020 demonstrated that 98% of young adults who took puberty blockers went on to cross-sex hormones. This study has been replicated many times, with most of the people being medicated going on to multiple surgeries and cross-sex hormones. When left untreated, young people mostly become gay or lesbian adults. Look up the life of English actor Rupert Everett if you have any doubt that this happens. When treated, they become transgender people with a lifetime of medicalisation. This is conversion therapy. There was a dark joke in the UK, there won't be any gay kids left. But this is happening in New Zealand too. Auckland councillor Paul Leatham recently wrote of his experience of being removed from Rainbow Youth's list of rainbow-friendly service providers. In a letter to him, Rainbow Youth observed, "There's no room for grey areas when it comes to questioning trans identities or experiences." Mr. Leatham observed that as a counsellor, I can tell you without doubt that this runs counter to what constitutes solid ethical therapy. So conversion therapy of gay and lesbian kids is happening in New Zealand, and it's being promulgated by organisations that are funded by government. There is a new cohort of young women who are reporting gender issues. It's only arisen in the last 10 years, has no satisfactory explanation, appears to have social contagion as its base. It appears to have similarities to the way that young women have been involved in anorexia and self-harm by cutting. The rate of increase is a staggering 4,000%. And it's also been marked by a demographic flip. Usually, in the early days, it was mostly young boys who reported gender confusion. This should be an enormous red flag, but New Zealand keeps no statistics to see what's happening. We propose the legislation be amended to collect data on the use of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. It's like it is for gender-affirming surgery. In the light of this, the definition of harm is severely problematic. What's defined as harm in our society at the moment is febrile at the extreme. J.K. Rowling is harmful. Meeting to talk about women's sex-based rights was apparently harmful. In Australia, it was judged harmful to speak about the harm to young people of gender medicine because it would harm those who'd already had it. This presentation would no doubt be judged harmful on this basis. But serious harm is caused by the affirmative-only treatment of gender medicine. It's not reflected in the legislation, but young people lose sexual function, fertility. There are questions around mental development. They miss puberty. They have lifelong bone density and joint problems. Medicine like phalloplasty, creating an artificial penis, is particularly harmful. Swedish data shows that this treatment leaves adult transgender people 19 times more likely to commit suicide than the average member of the population. Given this, and the evidence from the New Zealand psychiatry, how can it be possible to send parents who fail to criminalise parents who fail to send their children for medical and surgical treatment? Parents mustn't be taken to court for failing to recommend their children for gender reassignment when the evidence for medicine and surgery is contested and very poor. The assurances of a high bar ring hollow. If there are criminal sanctions, they will be used. This is already happening in Canada and Australia. And we know that in New Zealand, there are already lobby groups preparing to bring cases. We're aware that this happens in Australia, and it's aimed at strengthening uncritical affirmation in relation to gender identity. Parents, as well as teachers and health professionals who counsel caution, must not be criminalised. We recognise that paragraphs 5.2 and B and 5.2c provide legal cover for conversion therapy practitioners who transition children without assessing them properly. And if they have not assured that those children have proper informed consent, they should be they should be available to the kinds of censures around informed consent that are available in New Zealand. That's the main part of my comments. We're very unhappy about the bad process, the poor drafting of the legislation, and things like the fact that the Ministry of Health advised against a conversion therapy bill. But those are my main points, and happy to take questions.
Thank you, Jen. It was good timing because I was almost going to say we're nearly up for time, but there is time for one question, and Dr. Elizabeth Carey has a question.
I think Nicole had her.
Yeah, I was just going to say Nicole had
I
hers.
didn't see a hand. Sorry. Oh, it's fading away in the background. Apologies. Yeah, Nicole, you asked a question.
Thank you. I just try to make my hand my actual colour. Thank you so much for your comprehensive submission that you put in writing, plus for your presentation today. I just have one question. You talked about the definition of harm being problematic. What are your thoughts on different types of wording that we could use in replacement of harm?
I think, first of all, the thing which I have described, which is young gay and lesbian people being transitioned, that is not reflected in the bill. So we need to make sure that transition therapy, which is from gay and lesbian to transgender, must be included in the bill. That's one thing. And I'm very worried about harm because I looked at the Children's Act, and harm, one definition of serious harm is if a child and its parent are in severe disagreement. So, you know, with the barrier to what is called serious harm is very, very low. But I think the main issue for me is that, as I mentioned, we're living in an environment where harm is being regarded as having proper debate. You know, this is happening. This happened in. I mean, it's happening in broader areas than gender identity. I don't want to go into details, but you know, many of you will be aware of the effects of cancel culture. And if cancel culture becomes the predominant way in which our social relations happen, and it's increasingly that is happening, then people are citing as harm things which in a kind of liberal democracy are debate or discussion. I'm, you know, naturally enough, this presentation, according to sort of transgender ideology, would be regarded as harmful. From my perspective, I'm providing you with important evidence.
Sure.
But Jen, I mean, I'm not really sure what to say about that.
Jen, did you have an
Apologies, Nicole.
Sorry.
We've already gone over by about 5 minutes, so we have...
Sure, Madam Chair. I'm just giving the submitter an opportunity to answer the actual question I asked, which is...
It's all right. It's all right. I think we've had a long opportunity for the submitter. It's 5 minutes past the time allocated, and we have other submitters waiting. So, Jen, thank you so much for your time to the committee today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jen.
All right, we now have the Professional Association for Transgender Health, Aotearoa.